Since the emergence of COVID-19, traveling in and out of Nigeria has not been the same. Take air travel, for example. The cost of tickets has changed. Check-in procedure has changed. In-flight service has changed. In fact, the sitting arrangement at the airport has changed. But most importantly, the rules regarding travel during this time of COVID is changing. And this is the focus of today's episode. Welcome to the COVID Law series. My name is Jake Okechukwu Efodu.
This is the COVID Law series. This is the COVID Law series.
To start with, I'm going to have a very interesting conversation with a friend of mine who is a seasoned traveler. She has traveled before COVID, during COVID, after COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID, by COVID, and without COVID. Welcome, Tenny, to the COVID Law series.
Thank you. Thank you, Jake.
So now, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, you've had some air travel.
Yes.
And I'm curious to know, what was your experience like? Was it like, what were the requirements you had to go through?
No, I was going to Senegal for work, so I had to travel. Yes, so I left Senegal after about 7 months, and I came to Nigeria. This was in, I think in April this year. And you know, in Nigeria, you have to have a test from where you're coming from, and then you need a test in Nigeria. So you get to Nigeria. Exactly. So you get to Nigeria and you ought to self-isolate for 7 days, and after the 7 days you have to go take another test to confirm that you don't have COVID. It was a bit restricting because it's very easy to forget. So for example, I had an idea that I was supposed to do that, but then I got in and I wanted to go to the supermarket and I almost forgot that I was supposed to be isolating. But then, you know, I tried to remind myself and I stayed home for 7 days. You're right, it's it's easy to forget because you've just taken a test. For example, you've taken a test from where you're coming from, and you don't really feel that you have COVID, but then you now have to remember that you need to self-isolate.
Interesting that you speak about, the changing rules and policies around travel and how you've been able to meet up with most of them. As somebody who travels very well and COVID did not stop you and you're still doing really amazing, how did you, were you constantly reading online? Were you calling people in the country?
My God,
how did you get the information about these rules?
It was very difficult because when I was living in the UK, I kept on trying to call the Cote d'Ivoire embassy. I couldn't reach the one in the UK. I had to call the one in the US, and they told me that they didn't know anything. They don't know what the guidelines are. So I was just on my own. So I wasn't even sure what I needed to enter the country. I knew I needed a test, but you have two tests. You have the PCR test and you have the rapid test. But then I wasn't sure what I actually needed and within how many hours.
I didn't even know the difference between the PCR.
So initially people were accepting the rapid test, the ones that you can I think it's just like a saliva swab or something. But the PCR test is one that goes to the back of your throat and your nose. So, but many countries started saying that you needed the PCR test and they were no longer accepting the rapid test. So yeah, it was always very confusing. When I wanted to go to Cape Verde and I had that issue, it was trying to go to their websites of the embassy, but many of them don't update the information, so you're not really sure what is going on. What I realized is that the websites that have the most updated information are like the UK and the US travel advisory, because they always advise their citizens on other countries. So even though I am Nigerian, maybe trying to travel within West Africa, it's easier for me to go to the UK websites or the US websites where they're telling their UK people or the US people how to travel to Senegal or to Cote d'Ivoire, because they have more updated information, and I think it's within the diplomatic space. Yeah.
So check online, make sure you plan early, know the type of test you need, whether it's a PCR or a rapid test. Ensure that you know what safety protocols, or find out the travel advisories and know what requirements you need to take to ensure that you have a successful trip and that you're able to comply with the rules governing traveling in this time of the pandemic. Thank you so much for your very great insight. That is Tenny sharing part of her experience from traveling before and of course during the COVID pandemic. Now, what are the entry rules for a traveler coming into Nigeria? Here's what you need to know. Number one, ensure that you carry out your COVID PCR test, the polymerase chain reaction test. Number two, ensure that the test is negative 72 hours before your arrival in Nigeria. Number 3, register on the Nigeria International Travel Portal. Number 4, ensure that you self-isolate for 7 days on your arrival in Nigeria. Don't meet family, don't meet friends. And number 5, carry out a repeat PCR test 7 days after your arrival. Now you know. So join me as I get to discuss more with my guests. Let's talk about the changing rules that govern travel in this time of the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's talk. Today, we're discussing immigration, the travel rules during the time of COVID. And I have with me Barrister Clinton. Welcome to the COVID Law Series.
Thank you very much, Jake.
So from an immigration law perspective, what should travelers need to know or do if they are returning to Nigeria or traveling out of Nigeria?
Okay, so on the strength of the COVID-19 guidelines released by the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 on 27th of April 2021, if you are coming into Nigeria, you should come with your negative test results and then your permit to travel certificates. If you have these, you can, of course, beyond other immigration requirements, without these, you cannot be able to enter Nigeria. Yeah.
And so if a person does not fulfill any of these requirements, are you saying they can't travel by air? Let's say a person does not have a negative test or they don't have it within 72 hours. Is it they can't fly by air anymore?
Yes, they wouldn't be able to enter Nigeria by air on the strength of these presidential guidelines. And we must make the point that the guidelines were evolved as a result of the need to protect the citizens. So it is geared towards protection, and allowing people to enter without these requirements would definitely expose a greater people in the population to the risk of contracting the virus. And to the extent that it is the responsibility of the government to ensure the security, the welfare of the people, then we can say that, yes, the government is right to have evolved these policies that would protect the integrity of the health of the citizens, at least as far as COVID-19 is concerned.
So, Barrister Clinton, you've mentioned that people need to get their COVID PCR test done at least 72 hours before they get to Nigeria. You've mentioned that the travel certificate, what did you call it?
Yes, permit to travel certificate.
Permit to travel. How do they get this?
So it's after making necessary payments and then submitting the results on the Nigerian International Travel Portal. Online, yes.
Then so if I've done my COVID test within 72 hours and it's negative, I've gotten my travel portal. Is there anything else I need to? I mean, obviously, I have my visa, my passport, and my bag packed, and chocolates to bring back for my siblings. Is there anything else I should be having with me or not having with me to enable that I don't face any problems at the airport?
Yeah, of course, the usual protocols, your face masks, your hand sanitizers, and all of that, just to ensure safety.
If a person is refused from flying, let's say they don't meet any of these requirements, do they have any remedy? Like if they don't have their face masks or they didn't do the test, or let's say the test turns out positive, have they lost their travel tickets? Do they have any remedy?
Okay, first of all, I would make the point that traveling, at least within the context of Section 41 of the Constitution, is a fundamental right and falls within the right to movement of citizens. However, this right to movement is by no means an absolute right. It's subject to some exceptions. For example, any law that is reasonably justifiable in a democratic society in the interest of public health, public safety, public morality, and all of that. So as far as the law is concerned, there is justification. As far as the Constitution is concerned, there is a justification for these restrictions. So you do not have any remedies within the Constitution. However, of course, there are industry-specific remedies that would come from maybe the aviation sector. You are supposed to travel, you missed your flight. The fact that you missed your flights doesn't mean that you can't travel again. It doesn't mean the money you've paid, the very exorbitant rates you've paid for the ticket, that it will just go to naught. You can be able to reschedule subsequently and all that. So at least as far as the law is concerned, you do not have any remedy because the rule or the restrictions are founded on just principles, basically to ensure the protection of lives and property of Nigerians. So as far as the law is concerned, there is little by way of remedies for you. But then as far as the aviation industry is concerned, you can always reschedule your flights and So you do not automatically lose the right to fly. You can leave the country when you have complied with these requirements, or you can come into the country when you've complied with these requirements, subject to any other industry regulations or protocols that you may need to abide by. Yeah.
Great. So you've told us about what the requirements are when you're about to travel or when you're returning to Nigeria. Now, there's a requirement which I just shared around you need to self-isolate for how long when you land?
Okay, so under the new guidelines issued by the Presidential Task Force, it's 7 days.
So for 7 days?
Yes, 7 days. Yeah.
And that 7 days, what does it mean? I stay in my house?
In 7 days, you avoid as much as possible, avoid contact with people. It's a period for you to isolate, observe yourself, and then a second test will be conducted on you.
After 7 days?
Within the 7 days.
Oh, I see.
Yes, within the 7 days, and then the results would come to you, and it's after your results have turned negative before you can be able to leave.
There's this conversation around vaccine passports. That very soon, people who have been vaccinated, we need to prove that they have received their 2 shots or more before they are allowed on board, before they are allowed to disembark, or before they are allowed to enter into a different country. There's this conversation going on in Nigeria. Do you think this is a welcome development? What do you think?
Okay, first of all, I would say that the requirement for vaccination and vaccine cards are not new. These are not new conversations in the polity. I mean, we hear of the yellow card for yellow fever vaccines. And there's a reason for these things. Again, it's for health purposes. And if these things are for health purposes, let's, as much as possible, the citizens, the people should learn to adhere. Because the countries where you are going to, they will probably require these, that you provide the vaccine card showing that you've been vaccinated. No country would want you to come from your own country and then put their own citizens at risk.
Thank you very much, Barrister Clinton. It's been a pleasure having you right here on the COVID Law series. I would give you my signature. Thank you for being here with us and for answering our questions on this topic.
Thank you very much, Jake. It was a pleasure being here.
Good afternoon. Well done. Man, I help us. Somebody have entered trouble. They are calling me.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, Iyakebu Festival, Baba.
Who got Spider-Man?
That's Spider-Man. That's Spider-Man. Help me. Help me.
Sorry, my brother. No way.
Spider, where you go now?
Waiting.
Let me call you.
What where they go?
Somebody they sick.
You know wetin do am?
In the cough.
In the cough?
Yes.
See, now why we know they come Africa be this so? You see any of my colleague around?
Boy, be spider now.
No, I be mosquito. Call NCDC. I beg bros, I fit get bike for here.
Frank Donga is actually right. You know, the NCDC is one of the centers you can call. This is it for this episode of the COVID Law series. Your questions, recommendations, contributions are all welcome. Just use the hashtag COVID Law series. And don't forget to follow, like, comment, and subscribe. All right? See you on the next episode. My name is Jake Okechukwu Efodu. Goodbye.